And I'll start with the Google stuff, I think.
All right. And I think it's live. Well, OBS says it's live, but Substack, I'm just not sure. Okay, cool. We're live.
Okay, great. Hello, everyone. Welcome to stream number 2 for Happy Tech. And you may hear my dogs in the background. So just ignore them. They're going to war, and war is a noisy business. So today I want to talk about something really surprising, and I don't know how it's going to go, but I'm supposed to get a call from Google in 2 hours. No, wait, 2 hours? 3 hours and 6 minutes.
And we're pretty sure it
Because
is
guess what?
actually Google, not like a scammer pretending to be Google.
And it's not for a job or anything like that. But I found out that if you have a business Google workspace, you can actually get in touch with a human. That dramatic pause was for the human part. It's not a bot. At least I don't think it is, because they told me that they wanted to call me and I did it through the actual workspace situation. So, Robert, are we set up for screen share?
I mean, go ahead and screen share and then I'll figure it out.
Oh God, what did I do?
We asked them if they were a bot and they said they were a human, and by law if they were a bot they would have to tell us.
Oh my gosh. Hold on. I'm having an issue right now with my my brain.
Happy Tech can unfortunately not help you with issues that are related to your brain.
Okay. So, for this screen share, let me pull up. Oh, my dog is coughing up something. It's depressing. Okay. So, here we go. Um so this is my
All right, one second.
screen. Okay. Let me know when it's up.
All right, so we're gonna move. Oh my God, we're not gonna do what I just did there. We're gonna pull this, and then we're gonna move this here, and there we go.
Okay, great. So,
You might want to zoom in a little bit.
okay. How much?
That's better, yeah.
Okay. So essentially, there is workspace admin support. And I was in here reading, trying to figure stuff out, right? And here it is, contact Google Workspace support. So I went through all of these steps, and basically, it's in your, when you're in your Google Workspace, you go to your little pretty little picture of you, and then you go to the admin console. Okay. That's where you want to be. And you end up here. And once you're here, ignore everything else, but just pay attention to what I'm looking at. Don't look at anything else. Um, and then you go to support. Okay, so this is first an AI agent, but then depending on the issue, they will connect you with a human, which is what happened to me today, and it was very exciting. We are paying for Google Business, like our account is like a business account through Google Workspace. So that's probably one of the features. And I just didn't know about it. And we're literally a tech company and I had no idea. So that just goes to show, please don't feel, you know, like you don't know things. There's too many things to know. There's just like way too many things to know. So I'll just pause there. Rob, did you want to add anything else?
No, I mean, I think it's kind of interesting the way that the conversation went. It was someone, and this is kind of, I'll spitball a little bit on this because it's interesting to me. And what's interesting to me is what I talk about. This is kind of the thing if you're dealing with technical support and customer service in general. For example, let's say I call AT&T to say, hey, there's something wrong with my internet. I have worked at internet companies. I can guarantee I probably know a lot more about the internet than the person I'm on the phone with. But that doesn't matter because I'm not there for their knowledge. When you call customer support, you're often not there for the knowledge because especially with things with like Google Workspace, you kind of know, you've looked at the blogs, you've asked ChatGPT, you figured out all this stuff and it's not working. What you're there for is what they can access for you. Because someone at AT&T, for instance, they can access information about the internet system that I don't have access to. And I know what to do with that information. I get it. I just don't have it. They also don't know what to do with that information. But they will get a system telling them what to do, which means that you have to be patient with them. You have to really be patient. So in this particular case, Fee put out a whole paragraph of here's the problem, here's what we're trying to fix. Okay, this person said, great, I'm reading your information. And then they proceeded to spend the next half hour asking us questions that were clearly contained in the information we provided. So what does that tell you? Well, they didn't read it, or if they did read it, they did not comprehend it, which is much more likely. And that's because they have their script they have to follow. So what do? We were just kind of patient with them. As they asked us questions, which the information should have been available, we just answered those questions. Don't overwhelm them. If they ask you a question, don't give them another paragraph of information, because now they have to go through that. And a lot of times their English is a second language because Google is a cheapskate and probably is hiring people who are not native English speakers because it's cheap. That's not really their fault, not Google, the person doing the technical support. But that does mean that they know how quickly they can process and take in information. Is that ideal? No, that's not ideal at all. And that's been happening for decades as call centers have been shifting. And everyone's pissed off about it, and I'm not going to go too deep into that. But really, if you have something you need them to do, it means that you need to give them the information they ask when they ask it. Because if you give it up front, like imagine I'm going to go buy something, and as soon as I get to the front of the store, I start giving them my credit card information. That's not helpful for them. They need to know what I'm buying first, or that I'm even buying something. So even if I give them that information and it's accurate and they take it in and they understand it, they're not going to remember it because it's not relevant to them at that point. That's kind of the same thing. You just have to spoon feed them the information as they desire it and nothing more. And eventually, what happened in this case, right, is this person realized they had no way of solving our problem. Which is not surprising, because if there was an easy way to solve the problem, we would have already found it, because that's kind of what we do. And so then they have two options. One, find some reason to get us off the line. I mean, we weren't on the phone with them, but it was a chat line. Or escalate. They don't want to escalate. If they escalate, their boss comes and asks them why they had to escalate. Right? And they need an ironclad reason. So then they started being like, oh, we can't support this because of X. We can't support this because of X. And we just very calmly know, this is what we're doing. I get that, but this is still a problem. This is still a workspace problem. Okay, and eventually they said, okay, we know they can't fix the problem and they can't get rid of us. So then they escalated. And what escalation means is you go from tier 1 to tier 2. And tier 2 tech support usually knows more about what they're doing, and there's less of them. So let's say you have 10,000 people running your customer service. That's a lot, but maybe for Google, that wouldn't surprise me. You might have 500 tier 2, right? So they are definitely better. They know the systems better. They have access to better tools. They understand things better. And that there's fewer of them, which means tier 1 doesn't like to escalate to them unless they absolutely have to. So this person says, hey, can we call you? Now, something I can guarantee you, the person calling us will not be the same person we were on the chat with, because that person is going to close that chat and get to the next chat. But the person calling us is going to be the tier 2. And that's just kind of how that works. So we did get that. We now have the tier 2 support. And so hopefully they're going to be able to, if not solve the problem, at least tell us the next steps. And that's just kind of how you have to go through these things. It's just the way things are at this point, because everyone's trying to cut costs so much. And I'm just really surprised and grateful that Google actually even has this service, because it's very useful. I would say too, one of my first jobs, I was a tier 3 technical support. Which meant that if you had to talk to me, both of us were going to have a bad day, because I didn't know how to talk to people at that point, and I was just a junior engineer who happened to have access to things that the tier 2 people didn't have. Anyway, that's my soapbop. That's my soapbop on customer support. Back to you, Fee.
Okay. Thanks, Rob. So, another thing I want to add is that when I think their name was Sheba, proposed that we have a call, I said, I can't talk right now. Can we talk at 9 p.m. Eastern? And they said that they won't be available. And normally I would just be like, okay, I guess that's not going to happen. And then they said that I can start chat again later when I am available to talk on the phone. So when you're trying to get true support, sometimes they will not propose your solution simply because they don't think of it, one, but two, well, anyway, it could be a lot of different reasons. Okay, so what I've learned is to not assume. And that's really hard for me to do. But I didn't assume and I asked and I said, is there someone there who can call me at 9 p.m. Eastern? And I sent that message. And then they responded and said, yes, I can make sure someone from here calls you. And I gave them two phone numbers. And so they will be calling me in a few hours, hopefully. If not, I know I can restart the chat. So this is part of customer service when it comes to like just anything you're doing, just a general life tip, don't assume. Don't assume that they understand. If you're thinking in your head, oh, they really should do this, like this is how they should serve me, that is the exact question that you should ask because they are not, unfortunately, yet going to be able to read your mind. And actually, it's probably a blessing. My long-term therapist told me, she was like, Fee, it's a blessing that we don't know what the other person thinks. It actually is. As much as it would make everything easier, it would also be a disaster. And so we have to learn to communicate our needs. And for tech, that can be particularly challenging because there is so much complicated jargon. And it's not actually jargon. That's the first thing I had to realize is these things are named the way that they're named for a reason, and the labeling is actually correct. But for somebody who's not understanding it or has like a very experienced interaction with it, basically, or yeah, has a lot of experience with it, it's going to be challenging to use the right jargon. And so going to somebody who can talk very simply and explain what needs to be explained and can explain it the way that you need to hear it, that's really important. And it doesn't have to be, I'm not trying to say anything about us for this. I'm just trying to tell you in general, like find somebody who you understand and who you feel understood by, because that is very important to have that trust, especially with something like tech, because it can be really shame inducing. It can be really shame inducing. Okay, so I think we can move on from this topic. I would like to talk about another interesting thing that I've been exploring, and that is like pretty close to my heart in terms of ethical tech. And so there's this forum coming up. I was reading about this, and it's free, it's online, and it's part of this group called Effective Altruism. So they are having a conference. Oops, sorry, I know I'm scrolling. And it's for AI safety and governance, global health, animal welfare, and biosecurity. And it just looks really cool. And when I went into the AI section, they have a forum here. So I was just looking through it, and let's see. Yeah, I was just looking through it. So what I kind of want to bring up with this is that, let's see if we can find recent comments. Changes. Let's try this one. But what I kind of want to bring up with this is that the ethics of AI is still being figured out. I actually just read like a think piece. It was more like an opinion piece about AI and the water. Actually, I should try to find that and bring that up. But AI and water and whether that's actually overstated or not. And this wasn't like anything official, right? So it's just somebody's opinion. But it is interesting to note that like there's a lot of sort of competing priorities and conversations that are happening. So everything is really confusing and like churning right now. So it's important to just kind of read these things and then practice emotional regulation because we have no idea how things are going to unfold. And it's really important to give ourselves the space and the time to understand something, to understand what we do control and what we don't control, and to get the information that we need, but to also practice, like, and I'm saying this to myself too, like stress reduction around AI and the environment. That being said, Happy Tech does donate, and we donate every year to nonprofits, and we're going to continue to do that. And we're going to look into doing more earth friendly and climate change oriented nonprofits. So if you have any that you really love, please let us know because we could nominate them and then we could try to see if we can send some money their way to offset some of the, some of the tech costs that are there, whether it's pollution or anything else actually. There's just so many things around that. So if you have any that you really love, please let us know. And we would be happy to look into it. I'm going to try to find that water thing. Rob, do you have anything you want to add about ethics and AI?
I do think it's a really difficult problem. Um, and like I hear a lot of honestly a lot of the extremes from it. Like there are people going, AI is going to save the world, humanity is a plague, we need the machines to save us. To them being people saying AI is the plague that we need saving from. And to be honest, I think the truth, as always, is somewhere in the middle. It's AI and data centers and water. Like, I'm gonna soapbox a little bit about that too because that's another interesting topic to me. So those of you who are not in the know, you might be like, why does AI need water? It's not a living thing. Well, it's for cooling. And the thing is, like right now, my computer, even doing this stream and Zoom and all the other stuff I'm having doing, it is running pretty hot. So right now the fans are going. Fans are a very inefficient way of cooling a computer. And most laptops use fans because that's just how it is. But every single chip, the main chip in the computer, is going to be running at like 180 degrees, something like that. And if it gets above a certain amount of temperature, it's at this point, the gap between the circuits is so small that after a certain amount of temperature, electricity starts jumping between wires. And because the heat makes it easier to do that sort of thing. And that is not what we want a computer chip to be doing because that means the electrons end up in bad places, the data gets all messed up, and everything crashes. And what is AI? AI is run on chips. Millions and millions of chips. And so they have to keep those chips cool. Like, I don't know if you ever bought an NVIDIA graphics card, which is most of these AIs are using that. There's this big bulky thing, and the chip is actually this tiny little thing, but there's this big bulky card. And why is it a big bulky card? Because it has these two fans on it. Big, massive fans, and that's to keep it cool. And those blow out the warm air into your main computer, and then there's other system fans that blow that out into the room, and then you have a big fan on your ceiling that blows that out the window. So basically data centers are doing that at a much larger scale, but the thing is fans are not enough at that point. So what we do is we liquid cool. And so liquid cooling is essentially you actually just run water over, not like directly over the chip, but you have a copper heat sink that presses up against the chip and water flows over that because water is really good at taking in heat. And then as that flows out, it hits a fan, and then that fan does some stuff. Now, liquid cooling is great. The thing is, data centers can't even do that at scale because to do that at scale would just be so expensive. So they have, like, basically, I think it's the equivalent of like a swamp cooler type system where they pump in all of this water and they have other things sucking the water off or the heat off of the chips, and that puts it in that water, and that water gets so hot that it turns to freaking steam. And then that steam has to go to cooling chambers. And they do actually have cooling chambers. And actually, they don't, the reason they say, like, oh, there's 30,000 gallons of water for this data center. Yeah, the data center, if they didn't recycle, they'd be using a lot more. They actually do recycle a lot of water. The thing is, just like a nuclear power plant with its cooling towers, some of that gets lost. Because when it's in the steam form, the gaseous form of it is a lot harder to keep under control. And so they have big systems that are designed to cool down that water. But they still lose a lot of the water because that whole point of that system is not to overheat. And if you have too much steam, well, you got to let some of it off. And what's steam? It's water. So they're just venting water into the atmosphere because they're trying to get rid of heat, because that's the only way we can get water out the door, or heat out the door, is through water. And that's a problem, right? Because that's a lot of water. That's water that, it's like basically if I was just taking water and dumping it down the sewer. Like if I just left my tap open and it was just dumping water down the sewer. That sucks. And imagine if everyone in your town was doing that. That's a lot of water wasted. And people look at it that way because they say, "Oh my God, there's water and they're just wasting the water." They're not wasting it. They are actually utilizing it, and there are actually a lot of technologies to recapture that water and deal with it. But of course, these are companies that are more based on profit. So it's not that the data centers don't use water. I just want to, bring some understanding to why they use water. And it's not just that they're drinking it or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that's interesting. So the person who wrote this, his name is Andy Masley, and I looked him up, and he's actually the director of Effective Altruism, which is the one that's running the conference. So I find that interesting, first of all. And then he wrote this piece about how the AI water issue is fake. And I kind of wanted to just look at it a little bit with you, Rob, but also for anybody else who's listening to kind of understand. There's a Carl Jung quote that says, thinking is difficult, and that's why most people judge. And just keep that in mind, right? Thinking is difficult. It is actually difficult. That's why AI is like fucking taking off, because we're tired of thinking. We're tired of strategizing. We want to be able to tell somebody to do the thinking and just move on with it, okay? But let's take this time to actually think through what is being said here and actually look deeper at what is happening with AI. And I do believe that AI reveals existential issues, right? And I've written about this, that essentially what's at stake here is our own purpose, right? Our own purpose as humans. What are we here to do? If AI can just make art, if AI can just make, and I'm saying AI, right? Like, let's just keep it simple for right now. I know it's much more complicated than that. But if it can make music, if it can make art, if it can write, if it can strategize, if it can plan, if it can code, if it can design, what is our purpose? What makes us human? What is the point of doing any of the stuff that we do? What is the point of trying to help somebody else? What is the point of life, right? So it reveals these like existential dread sort of things and like fear, right? And so it's really hard to think clearly when we're in that mode. So let's get out of that mode and come into this mode of just like looking at this piece that somebody wrote and trying to understand what they're saying. So I'll start. Rob, did you want to add anything before I keep going with this?
I mean, there's a whole topic on the what it means to be human and what is the worth of being human in the AI world. Um, but no, like I have a lot of things to say about this piece. So go ahead.
Okay. So, we're not trying to tear this person down in any way, but we're trying to just look through these ideas and really just work on the ideas that are presented here. So what they claim is that on the national, local, and personal level, AI is barely using any water, and unless it grows 50 times faster than the forecasts predict, this won't change. And he's writing specifically for an American context, and he goes on to say that it caught on for three reasons. So I'm going to look at this. So it's this section. People get upset at the idea of a physical resource like water being spent on a digital product, especially one they don't see value in and don't factor in just how often this happens everywhere else in our lives. And we can go into that later. I'll just read through the points first. People haven't internalized how many other people are using AI. AI's water use looks ridiculous if you think it's a small, marginal new thing. It looks tiny when you divide it by the hundreds of millions of people using AI every day. People are easily alarmed by contextless large numbers, like the number of gallons of water a data center is using. They compare these large numbers to other regular things they do, not to other normal industries and processes in society. So I think what I'm kind of gathering from this is that it's like one part of like the, global nightmare that we're living in when it comes to the climate and pollution and Earth's resources and resource management and all of those different things that are at play, right? And there has been some progress, by the way, when it comes to let's just say pollution. There has been progress when it comes to pollution, right? But we're still not anywhere near done. Okay. And the crisis, from what I understand, is becoming worse. Okay. So, but I think this piece is trying to place this within all of the other contexts. For example, one of the things that I'm really passionate about is food waste, which is why I'm fat. Just kidding, just kidding. But like in America, we waste 40% of our food. Okay. Well, annually. This is the last time I checked. And I think it was a few months ago that I checked. And in the world, we waste 30% of our food, right? So that is another waste area. And I think this is just trying to contextualize AI against things like that. Or, for example, another one could be airline flights, right? How much we use fuel and plastic and metal and human resources, and just like all these different things to go up into the air and fly to Bali, right? So it's comparing those things and trying to place it comparatively, which I think is like a valuable thing to do. And this is a little bit more of a fringe piece, by the way. Most of the network media things that I read are all just saying like it's a disaster. So just keep that in mind as we're talking about this. Rob, did you want to add anything else before I keep going?
Yeah. Also, welcome in, Tina. It's good to see you. One of the first things I want to talk about is like kind of at the beginning of this article. It says something important, which is all data centers use water. And that is really important because data centers have kind of been mostly in the public conscious recently as AI data centers. But there have been data centers for a long time. That's where the cloud is. Ooh, the cloud, it's spooky. AWS, some of you may be familiar with AWS. Those are all data centers. And so a lot of us in the tech sector, we look at the cloud as like it's still someone's computer, it's just not yours. And those computers have to be somewhere. Google is another big one. And in fact, up like 4 or 5 years ago, Amazon was actually saying we are not able to take on any large customers at this point because we don't have enough server capacity for them. They didn't have enough data centers. So even then they were building data centers. Those take on water. And I do think that's important to call out for two reasons. One, because we've had data centers for a while. They do take up a lot of water because they've always had cooling problems. However, we have seen the rise of data centers just exponentially grow because now AI needs a lot of data. Used to be you'd have your server on Google and you maybe need, let's just say like 10 units of server space. Okay. That's not actually a real measurement, but we'll just use it for comparison. Then now you've got AI, and on average, AI, if you're like an AI startup, you're not usually not running your own AI. But let's say you are an AI that is running your own AI startup. Or I guess that is also a thing to happen, but I meant it the other way around. An AI startup that is running your own AI, building your own LLM. Whereas before, your service for your startup might need 10 units of power. For an LLM, you're going to need at the beginning 100 units. And then that'll quickly scale to 10,000 units of power. Then you've got someone like OpenAI who is using 10 billion units of computing power. And so you can see like this demand has gone up tremendously. So just saying all data centers need water is true. But it's also a little disingenuous because we need like 10,000 more data centers. That's not completely inaccurate, honestly. I think it's more like 1,000, but that's going to use a lot more. The other thing they bring up is like, hey, auto plants require a lot of water too. And that's actually also very true. Any manufacturing plant, which we're trying to build more of those too, needs water because you need to wash parts, you need to lubricate tools, you need water for a bunch of different things. The thing is, if someone's going to open a steel making plant that needs a bunch of water, they're going to do a pretty in-depth environmental study on that. And what I've been hearing, at least, and I don't know how accurate this is that a lot of local governments are bypassing those requirements for data centers specifically. And that's kind of interesting to me because this is something I need to research because I want to understand what is the benefit to these communities to have a data center, because data centers don't have that many jobs, right? If you have a manufacturing plant, you at least have some skilled workers going in that plant, running the machines, etc. Data centers themselves don't require that many operatives. For a massive data center, like maybe 100,000 square feet, you might have 40 people total on that staff because they just kind of run themselves. But there's got to be some reason. But anyway, like that's kind of the concern, is that a lot of these data centers are getting approval without considering whether or not there's actually resources in the community to support them, which would be done for other industries. And so I don't think people are concerned necessarily with the idea that data centers exist. Well, there are definitely some people about that. I think what they're more concerned about is that their local governments are just kind of bending over backwards to get these data centers in without really considering how the community is going to be affected by that. I think that's some of it. Though I do agree people are alarmed by contextless large numbers, right? But then the idea of, what do you say? People haven't internalized how many other people are using AI. That's true. But that's like if I built a coal power plant in your backyard and you said, oh my God, this is terrible. And I said, but you don't realize how many people are using the power from that power plant. That doesn't matter. It's in your backyard. It's causing you problems. Like a small community of maybe 10,000 people that's got a bunch of data centers, they don't really care that their problem is not that, oh, I only think 5 people are using this AI. Why do they need these data centers? I don't think that is their problem. I think their problem is they're asking, why are the data centers here? Which is a little NIMBY, to be honest. So there is that kind of balancing act there as well. But it's kind of like, oh, maybe one data center too is okay, but now we have 15. And I think that's the issue that people are running into. It's not really, like, I feel like this article is setting up straw men, essentially. Like the issues that they're talking about here are not the issues that I've seen people complaining about. Though they are making good points that if those were the issues that people were complaining about, they're not really big issues. So that's kind of my thoughts so far.
Yeah, and also everything we're saying here, these are our opinions. They don't represent anybody else's opinions. So I just want to see, like, yeah, there's a trade-off for these, for the water, and there's just so much in this piece. But mostly it's talking about the water piece of things, and we can kind of like try to go into it a little bit deeper. Okay, so here, let's start here. All US data centers used 200 to 250 million gallons of fresh water daily in 2023. The US consumes this much. Yeah, everything we do, then this is true. Everything we do online interacts with and uses energy and water in data centers. So that's true. Just even by running this stream, right? We're doing that. Just the use of technology itself, which is why I think it's so much bigger than just AI to look at the technological needs that we have and how that's impacting the environment, and specifically which environments it's affecting more. So this is like an important piece to notice. I like what he says here too, and I don't actually know if I wonder if I can Google this, but so data centers in the US consumed approximately 0.2% of the nation's fresh water in 2023. Okay, but basing it on these numbers. Yeah, it's a miracle that something we spend 50% of our time using only consumes 0.2%. I mean, and that is true. right? I think there is an element to that I find compelling. Um, yes, one estimate suggests that data centers in the U.S. and again, this is the AI overview. Consumed approximately 0.2% of the nation's fresh water in 2023, a figure derived from direct water consumption. Let's just see what the source is. Oh, he's the source. That is circular. Um,
that's that's just
so
glorious.
this is where I just want to go into Gemini and how I use it a little bit. Please provide. So I always ask for scientific. Oops, I spelled it wrong. Studies and real data. Because this is just his finding, right? Support the original statement, though the precise national percentage can vary slightly depending on the specific data sources. Okay, Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, a 2024 study, 17 billion gallons of water for cooling, 46.5 million a day compared to the national total of fresh water. It's 132 billion. So it is similar. It's 46 million to, yeah, yeah, right. So this is something to keep in mind, right? If when we place it within the context, which you always want to do with any numbers, and I think he is right about that, to place it within the context. But then when I've looked at the different charts I've looked at about like the predicted use, it is alarming. So I'm not trying to discount that either. What I've realized is that multiple people are right. Multiple people are seeing different pieces of something and they're seeing it accurately, and then putting all of those little pieces together into a cohesive understanding is really important, and it requires a little bit of critical thinking, a little bit of patience, and a little bit of emotional regulation. Because like right off the bat, just reading this, it does upset me to a degree. I'm like, oh my gosh, water, like water is precious. It's really, really precious. So there is that emotional piece, but we have to kind of work through that, and it's really important to be able to do that, especially when you're doing anything with tech, and that's what we're here to support with, is to work through these different things. But I do just want to go back to what I discovered here. When I Googled it, right, I had the AI overview on for Gemini, and the first thing it said is yes. Okay. When there's a little link here, and I think people click it. I hope they do. Sometimes they don't. So click the freaking links on here, guys, because you can see the source. And if you don't, if the source looks like an opinion piece, then try to get more data. Try to get actual scientific data or actual real world numbers that have been published. And let's not go into politics about what's been taken off of the internet. Whatever is on the internet that is still published data, use that. Okay. And then if you're upset about what you can't access, honey, we don't control that. Okay. So I just want to say this piece that you may be in a circular loop. Okay. You may have accidentally tunneled yourself into one view of the world just because of Googling something, and then the exact thing you're trying to research is the source. And so you may just have more confirmation bias. And this is part of like being informed on the internet. And as AI deepfakes get better too, and I actually think that'd be an interesting thing to look at, is Obama recently had an AI deepfake video about, and it has over a million. Let's see. It has over a million views, and I just really want to. Is it this one? I'm trying to find the right one. Give me 1 second, because is this the one? No, it had way more views. Let me pause 1 second. I'm gonna look for it. Rob, do you have anything else you want to add?
Let's talk about other things. Yeah, I think it's one of the other things that's really important about AI to remember is that it is designed and trained to please you. And that is, it sounds crude, but that's kind of true. When they train these AIs, they use they use something that's called, oh god, what is it? It's like aggressive. I don't remember the exact term. I should know the term because this is like what I do for a living. But essentially, the AI will, and you may have seen it if you used in ChatGPT, the AI will say, hey, here's my response, and their trainer will tell them whether they like that response or they don't like that response. And then the AI will try a different response, and it trains itself. So it's got all the information at that point. It's just trying to fine tune its tone. And so that's why people say that AI sounds sycophantic. We actually had something come up where we had told the AI that, okay, you have access to this particular tool, and I want you to call that tool to make use of that tool. But we'd forgotten to actually give it access to the tool. And the AI spit out output, okay, I've called that tool. And
Yeah.
you know, like it didn't, obviously it didn't, it couldn't have, but it wanted us to be happy. And so that's something, like if you're asking AI, the way that you frame it and frame your question is very important, because it's going to it's trying to figure out what you want, not what you actually need.
Yeah. And asking it multiple times in different ways, right? Like that's also something I'll do. And just kind of being really good at interrogating and questioning it. So this is a video that I wanted to show you guys. I won't have the audio on right now, but I immediately knew this was a deep fake. Like I could tell that, right? Because I just could. I mean, actually, maybe I should go into why, but if you look down here, 1.1 million. And when you look at the description, so this is also what's interesting. The person who sent me this like didn't realize it was AI, but this is an independent fan created channel and is not connected to Barack Obama, his campaign, or any political organization. Our videos draw on public speeches and verified reporting and are presented for educational and analytical purposes only. We use voiceover narration, storytelling, and dramatized reenactments to break down complex political news in a clear, emotionally resonant, and engaging style. All visuals and voices are produced by us and do not feature or portray Barack Obama himself. And then this is what their aim is, right? So we work to share public information responsibly and adhere to fair use guidelines, right? But is it written in here that it's AI? No,
No, they
it's
just
not.
implied it heavily.
Exactly. And I find that really, really fascinating. And I scrolled the comments and I was like, is anybody saying that this is AI? I didn't find a single comment pointing out that this is AI. So, this is a deepfake literal speech from an ex president of the United States that is AI. And here's one of the ways I could tell. And I'll show you and I'll slow it down to 0.5. Let me go back a little bit. So, you'll see right now the way video generation with AI works is that they can do small video generation. They can't yet do full blown movies like really long length and keep the integrity of what's happening. So when I was watching this, I noticed little twitchy movement. So if you slow down the video, you can see that. So let's just watch. Yeah. So see the way he's moving there, it's a little unnatural compared to how humans would typically move. And we can tell that because, yeah, we're watching it. Watch how his shoulders kind of move. And the other thing that I pay attention to a lot is his blinking. So here he blinks very rarely. So that's something to keep in mind for when you're watching a video, you're wondering if it's AI or if it's a deep fake. That's one way to tell. And if you're just listening to a voiceover, you're done. Like there's no way. Like it's already gone. Like the voiceover thing, like you can't tell. Okay, like I haven't found a way to figure it out. Like, oh, actually, Rob, didn't you run into that with like a voiceover?
Yeah, there's been a couple things that I've found that, and it's hard to tell at this point. They're very good, but what I've found is that AI will sometimes pronounce things very interestingly. And so there's been channels that I've been listening to and then I realized suddenly, oh my God, this is AI. And this is like, I've been watching it for 5 videos. And I could tell just because the inflection on a word didn't actually match the sentence. And the thing is, if you are a human and you say something wrong, there you kind of realize you've said something wrong, right? And if this is like, let's say I'm running a channel that is well polished, which my channel is not well polished, but let's say I'm running a well polished channel. If I say something wrong or do a bad inflection, I'm going to stop, I'm going to get another cut, and I'm going to splice that better cut in. I don't want that weird inflection in. Or there's a guy I watch, Isaac Arthur, that he has a bit of a speech impediment. And what he'll do is when he messes something up in his recording, he will stop and he will just say the sentence again. But like still, like he's not drawing active attention to like I fucked up this sentence, but still he's doing the sentence over again because he knows he wants you to actually understand what he's trying to say. And AI won't do that because AI doesn't know what sounds right. And so if you get like, I'm trying to remember the exact example that it was, but it was just like at the end of the word, the sentence wasn't a question, but somehow like it inflected like a question on this word, and it just did not make any sense that anyone would say the word that way. And because AI doesn't know what it's doing, it just knows examples, and it just ran into some edge case that it didn't really predict, and so then it gives you something weird. So it is kind of harder to predict at this point, but there still are some tells. The problem is the fact there's so few tells at this point means that people building these technologies know that there are the tells, and they're trying to fix it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just going to get more sophisticated as time goes on, which can be a blessing and, a curse at the same time. So that is something I also wanted to kind of mention, right? Like it's one of those things that just try to keep up with it a little bit. You don't need to be like, super on top of everything, but just to have a little bit of knowledge of where things are going, I think would be helpful. And then to look into like ethical options, right? And really like dive a little bit deeper. Oops. Well, anyway. So yeah, if you want to dive a little bit deeper. The other thing I wanted to say is that a lot of people talk to us about email signatures, and it's not exactly related to AI right now. But if you need an email signature built, that is a freebie that we offer. So let us know. We can build a lot of the different templates that are out there. We can make a really good email signature for you. We can even make animated ones. And if you find one that you really like and you're like, yeah, this is the one that I want, please let us know. And we would love to create that for you because it's actually pretty doable for us. And it adds a little bit of polish. If you're a solopreneur, it can add a little bit of polish to your email signature. So that is something that we offer. And then if you need any support with your email, please let us know too. Like if you're being marked as spam or if you're having any other issues with email, because there are a lot of different things that can come up. Or if you've like lost emails, for example, and you want to try to figure out how to retrieve them, let us know and we might be able to support with it and yeah, give you some guidance on how to do that. Okay. I think we're going to end a little bit early tonight. I mean, yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Rob?
No, I mean anything else I would just go off on another tangent. So yeah, I think we're good for now, but be sure to tune in next time for further episodes on wacky adventures in tech.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you, everyone. Bye.